Okay, I'm going to give everybody a minute just to get all logged in. But I want to welcome everybody to this incredible webinar that we have planned for you today, all about AI and technology. And there is nobody better to be here explaining all of it than my friends Leigh and Will with LaFleur Marketing. And as you guys know, my name is Ginger. I'm the Executive Director of Connectionology. We've got a lot of other great webinars coming up next month, so stay tuned to connectionology.com. But we also have our Nashville brain injury seminar that includes pain, suffering, and damages, which is next weekend. And there is still time to register if you guys would like to come with us. We have a lot of great speakers, a lot of great events, and just wonderful people coming. So you do not want to miss it. And again, all the details are on our website. If you have any questions during today's webinar, which I know you will, I definitely want you to keep track of those and put them in the Q&A box if you can. However, we're going to keep an eye on the chat as well. But this will help streamline everything for us. And then we will get to your questions as soon as we can. And then we'll be taking 2 quick breaks because you'll get to meet my amazing partners over at HMR, On Point Legal Nurse Consulting, as well as Fox AE and Emotion Track. All incredible people. We love working with these companies and we really appreciate you guys supporting them. So, because we're going to be talking about a lot, I'd like to go ahead and get started because we have a lot of neat things that we'll be talking about. And starting with one of my dear friends, her name is Leigh. She's going to be with us actually in Nashville next weekend. So, if you guys are coming, you'll have a chance to come and say hello to her. She's the Director of Compliance and Content over at LaFleur Marketing. And I just want to back up just a second because those who have never heard of this company, which is incredible, they're actually the leader in the industry and they specialize a lot of their marketing services for law firms, financial services, technology companies, and other professional services as well. And as you're about to hear in a minute, I'm blown away by both of them because they're just incredible. The things that they have done, the brands that they have worked with are just, it's amazing. So you will be hearing from Leigh, who is, again, as I said, the Director of Compliance and Content. She's also earned her JD, which was back in 2003 from, I know I'm going to say this wrongly, but Valparaiso.
Valparaiso University.
I knew it. University School of Law. And now
Okay.
I knew I was going to get that one wrong. And then she uses a lot of her experience to connect firms and consumers nationwide. She also co-authored the Digital Marketing for Law Firms, The Secrets to Getting More Clients and Better Cases with Chip LaFleur in 2020. Leigh, if I can get a copy of that link, I would love to share it with everybody because I know they're going to be asking to check that out. But that is
Happy to share it with you guys.
very cool. And then in addition, you guys are going to also learn from Will. He loves helping leaders create and realize their plans for growth. And as a business designer and a creative strategist, he also has a passion for problem solving and storytelling. And he processes a lot of that by using human-centered point of view and design thinking skills for empathetic understanding. In addition to that, he also uses frameworks and data analysis for validation, and he has repositioned companies' competitive where to play. That means developed go-to market strategies for almost every size business. And he's also helped improve sales strategies with Fortune 1000s. So what that means is he has actually helped a lot of companies help solve their problems. And that includes helping projects for companies like Steelcase, Colgate, Palmolive, Victoria's Secret, Diesel, Godiva, Deloitte, Audible. You guys all know Bath and Body Works. And then Humana, People, Field and Stream, which we need to talk about. If you guys don't or haven't heard of Field and Stream, that's a very cool brand. He's worked with Men's Fitness, Entertainment Weekly, Reader's Digest, Levi's, Crow, American Folk Art Museum, as well as Impractical Jokers, and over 125 other businesses. I mean, it just blows me away. So we are so lucky to have both of you guys with us today. It is such an honor, and I cannot wait to hear what we're going to be discussing. Again, I hope everybody brings their questions because they're going to be covering a lot of detailed information. And we are recording a copy in case anyone would like to refer back to this later on, which I'll make sure you get that after the webinar. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar over to Leigh and Will.
Awesome. Thank you, Ginger. Right.
Sorry.
And also, I'm going to add that if you would like a copy of today's slides, you'll be able to email Leigh, and I'm going to put both of their emails in the chat box right now. So thank you guys again so much. I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Right. Well, welcome everybody. As I said, I'm Leigh Ebrom, and I'm here with Will McDermott. We're both from LaFleur Marketing, and we're going to start digging into how to innovate with integrity, focusing on generative AI deployment and compliance. So the big issue that we're going to dig into today, and because this is a new concept and something you're probably not all of you are incredibly familiar with, we kind of leaned into that old law school idea of IRAC, issue, rule, application, conclusion. And so our issue today that we're going to explore is whether your firm is using generative AI responsibly and strategically. And I think that duality of both responsible use and strategic use is really important here.
So I'm gonna give you a little bit of background about what a large language model is and how it kind of works. So for those of you that are familiar and unfamiliar, generally the interface is a text box. So you write in some sort of prompt or question, inquiry. That question and inquiry gets broken up into a bunch of chunks of text and then given a numeric value within the system. And then that is then processed in a sequential fashion to create something on the other end. So it's not a machine or a system that understands what you're asking, but what it is a very advanced predictive engine. So it takes the combination of letters, which are in tokens, and then predicts what the next most likely combination there is. It's just a very highly advanced autocomplete like you use on your phone, generally a way of thinking about it. It's just very highly advanced. So how do these models get trained? There are several different common data sets that are used. One of the ones that a lot of the large models right now are trained on are some of these, Common Crawl being one of them. It has, as you can see, a ton of data in it, but it's not exactly the entirety of the internet, as some people kind of like to quip. And at the end of the day, what it really winds up doing is distilling all this data into kind of a gestalt of what it's been trained on. So it creates parameters, and those parameters can range from, we'll talk a little bit more of that later, but usually in the sort of 70 billion range to almost a trillion range for the new GPT 4.5. Here's a big issue that is often brought up is hallucinations. So hallucinations on the free version of GPT and a lot of the open source models and the older models were quite high. And essentially they were trained on lower amounts of data. And so they had far fewer parameters. And what essentially happens is the machine is really, or the system is really designed to try and please you. So it wants to give you an answer, and it will do its best to predict what that answer is. So in that comes a certain amount of sort of fabrications or what has been generally termed hallucinations in order to get that complete. So versions of GPT wildly inaccurate at times. The thing to kind of remember here and put in context is that it is a generative system, right? And it is about generating something that wasn't necessarily there before. It's not exactly deductive reasoning. So humans, when they are working on things, they also have human error. A new concept to really wrap our heads around is machine error. It's not frequently that we're talking about machine error in any significant way because the way that we have been designing systems and machines is for the most part, entirely based on output and accuracy, whereas this is much more about a generative model right now. Now, that said, we're seeing in all of the major companies that are behind this focused on decreasing that level of hallucination rate over time. And the way that they're getting there is two ways primarily. One is by creating models with more parameters, and then also looking at how to generate higher quality data sets to train off of in the first place. So this is the worst version that you will ever see in the rest of your life, basically the way to look at it. Leigh, do you want to take privacy?
Absolutely. So one of the big concerns that I've heard over and over again from lawyers is this idea of using artificial intelligence, generative AI, and violating their clients or other privacy concerns. And there is some reality to that. Most generative AI models use the information you input into their training data. And so if you have an open model, when you input something in, such as client data, personally identifiable information, you are sending it into the algorithm, and then the algorithm is then trained on it. Thank you. That goes into large language model, and then it uses that information to learn and develop and become more advanced. One of the things, though, that is often thought is that if I inputted personal information into an open AI model, that it might churn out my information word for word. That information that you put into an LLM or a generative AI model is particleized. Bits of that truth are going to potentially bubble up and show up in other answers, but probably a word for word, delineation of your client's cases or medical conditions are not going to show up, but parts of it might, information might. And for that reason, we strongly discourage anyone from using an open AI model, such as the free ChatGPT versions like GPT 3.5. For anything that's going to involve personally identifiable information.
Yeah, this is also another big area that has had a lot of pushback from the research models that were originally released. So you'll have enterprise level models, you'll have workspace versions. They're usually a price upgrade for those, and those have pretty distinct disclaimers around not using your input for training data unless you acknowledge it. So in many cases, there's a toggle switch that you can turn off and it won't collect your data to additionally train off of. Some of the highly publicized versions of sharing data or data popping back up within other people's chats kind of been overblown. The chances of it happening are very true and distinct, but some of the more sensationalized cases aren't necessarily fully true too. As a general rule, don't put in client or private data. Try to anonymize it as much as you can.
Absolutely, yeah. Some of you might have heard of what happened with Samsung, where some of its engineers and technologists inputted some pretty proprietary code, I think including some of their proprietary code involving their chips and semiconductors. Whether or not that actually appeared later in other people's queries is, I think, highly debatable. But nonetheless, it is a best practice to avoid putting anything that is proprietary or confidential into an open AI model.
One more thing to cover here, since we keep repeating the phrase, the naming systems of these companies are absolutely horrible. So when Leigh's referring to an open AI, it just means there's open AI and then closed AI models. The company OpenAI does not indicate that it is an open AI model. It's just a naming convention issue. So most paid language models that you might use, like OpenAI or Bing, Microsoft's Copilot, those will have some protections there.
But again, you're going to hear this a lot from us, inputting a client's data into a model that uses client inputs for training, which we often are referring to now as an open model, is likely a violation of attorney-client privilege and should be avoided at all costs. All right, we've talked a lot about open and closed AI models. How the heck do you determine which is which? And as well as referenced several times over, if you're using a free version of a generative AI model, it probably is using your inputs for training. So your free chat GPT, if you put something in there, it is training on it. Plus, you can toggle that off, but the default, I believe, is that it will train on your inputs unless you tell it to do otherwise. And ChatGPT Plus are those $20 a month kind of standard accounts. If you are using Microsoft Copilot for Bing, that is also an open model that will use your inputs for training. Most enterprise paid models for AI are going to be closed. So if you're using a Microsoft 365 Copilot, that is a closed model. It will not use your inputs for training. And the same with if you're using ChatGPT Teams, which is their enterprise option at the moment. You are in pretty safe territory as well. But when in doubt, and you do have an ethical obligation to check these things, refer to the model that you're planning on using, look at their terms of use and see how they treat data and inputs that are put into their models. All right, emerging trends in AI compliance. AI is rapidly evolving and the regulatory bodies, whether it's the state bar or the courts, are struggling to keep up with it. And so this will change, it is changing, but I wanted to give you a kind of an overview of where we're at right now and some common truths that are probably going to be best practices moving forward. The first is that transparency is going to become the norm. Already we're seeing YouTube, the second largest search engine in the world, requiring disclosures of when people who are content creators are uploading information that is, or videos that contain either synthetic or hybrid content. That means that if you're using software to create a physical avatar or a voice avatar and you're publishing it to YouTube, you are going to have to inform the platform that you are publishing synthetic content or hybrid content. And if you don't disclose that, you might see penalties starting to arise. We already have California and Florida providing guidance on the appropriate use of generative AI in law practices. And at least 21 federal trial judges have issued standing orders concerning the use of AI. Those are all over the place. I mean, from prohibiting the use of AI for research or drafting to one or the other. Some require disclosures, some don't. Some require certifications, some don't. So make sure you understand the rules that apply in the courts and in the states that you are practicing in. Similarly, the 3rd, 5th, and 9th federal circuits are working on broader AI and disclosure rules for the practice there as well. These are all things that we're watching carefully, and you should as well. Looking at, moving forward, some of the...
Leigh, I was going to tell you and Will, there's actually 2 questions that came up, but I think it had to do with the slide before. This one, and that was, would that include the AI used by Filevine or EvenUp specifically? So what question do you need to ask them if that doesn't happen?
I have not looked at Filevine or EvenUp's terms of use when it comes to their AI functionality. I don't know if you have, Will, but look there. If you're not comfortable and you don't know, I would avoid, and it's a little tricky with Filevine, but making sure that you're not inputting information that could be considered confidential or proprietary. Just check the terms of use. I would hope that a company like Filevine is a closed system, but it's better to check, and you have arguably an ethical obligation to check and understand. And if you don't know the answer and you read the terms of use and you still can't figure out the answer, ask your account rep for guidance and information, and you continue to ask those questions until you're confident and comfortable with the answer.
Perfect.
That said, generally speaking, if they are utilizing Copilot, which would be typically done through an Azure instance, or if you're using an API for GPT, or if that company is, then that would be a closed AI system, and it would be training off your data. The one area to maybe explore a little bit more is if it is a reputable company, still checking the terms is important because you need to understand what kind of data they might be using and how they're using it for training their own systems. So currently, a lot of companies are starting with using some of these bigger models, but the trend is to start trying to build your own or incorporate cheaper, lighter, easier, more specific future models within your system, which would inherently be closed, but they might be using your data to train on, for instance, for that. So it's just good to know because everything is so gray right now and it's still being determined. So doing due diligence is always going to be very important. If it's not a company you've heard of, like Fileline, everyone's heard of that for the most part. But if it's a company you haven't, the likelihood that they might be playing fast and loose with their terms is pretty high. So be very cautious about that one.
Okay, perfect. And then the other question real quick is, in your opinion, is there one that's better than the other, Microsoft versus Chat GPT?
There are so many AI models out there, and I think a lot of it is what is the use case for that you're trying to, what is this, what are you trying to use it for? And also personal preference. Will, I have a feeling you might have some strong opinions about this, but perhaps not.
Always. So what Leigh said is correct. But also, in addition to that, it is a arms race. So every couple of months, something new comes out and they're getting better and better. So for instance, Microsoft has a partnership with OpenAI. So a lot of their current instances that you might find, their Copilot instances on Azure, would be utilizing OpenAI's model. But what I've heard from my friends who are deploying things on enterprise level, that the OpenAI model itself, the GPT 4.5, is still a better performing model for them than this Copilot instance when you're doing sort of server-based operations. If you're just like you and me and we're going in there and we're asking to do things and we're generating some prompts, a lot of the models are comparable. Gemini from Google is also out there, scores very highly on a lot of the tests that are out there. But again, every 3 months, every couple of weeks, they're releasing new iterations, and it's just all the capabilities are just ramping up and up and up.
So you're saying we need to do this webinar at least once a month so we can keep up with all the new stuff.
Practically speaking,
Yeah.
I'm constantly learning some new revelation at least weekly, if not multiple times a week.
Well, I think everybody watching would agree that we're up for it if you are. So just keep us posted. All right, I'm gonna hand it back to you guys.
Careful what you wish for. So digging into some of the ethical obligations at a very high level, as I've mentioned already, understand the technology you're using and how it collects data and just how it operates. You shouldn't be using something and inputting a client's deeply personal information into it unless you know that it's going to be treated with the level of care that you would treat it in your own office. again, respecting your client's confidentiality. Again, check those terms of use. When it comes to your practice's use of generative AI, it is a best practice to be honest with your clients about it. It's one of those things that there might be a fear that, they think you're cutting corners, or that you're, doing something that isn't, appropriate with AI, or some people might be nervous about it. But as you have an ethical obligation to be your client's counselor, and explaining those risks and benefits of your AI use in plain language will help them. It also should allay some of those concerns, because if you understand the technology you're using, and you're using it in a way that is going to improve your decision-making, streamline your review of documents, or just give you time to build better strategies for your clients, it's going to be in their best interest. However, having said that, I know many folks on this webinar are probably personal injury attorneys that are charging a contingency fee. But if you are charging hourly rates for some of the work that you do, the bar associations and the state bars are really pretty clear that you can't pad your hours if you're starting to create efficiencies using AI. If you are doing hourly rate work, it might be time to start thinking about flat fee, so that you can do this in a way that is ethical and appropriate for your clients. I think it's worth noting, this is from the California guidance, that over-reliance on AI tools is inconsistent with the active practice of law and application of trained judgment by the lawyer. This leans into what Will has said already. Machine error is real. It is happening less and less. But you are, at the end of the day, the person who is directing the strategy and responsible for the review of your client's information. And just as you would have to do if you had a law clerk or a paralegal who was helping you with your practice, you'd have to review and oversee that work. You need to do the same if you have AI assistants helping you with your practice. And again, treat AI as something that supplements your skills and improves your subject matter expertise, but does not replace you and the invaluable service that you provide to your clients. This comes into play if you are using AI for marketing, if you're thinking about writing a book with help from AI, emphasis on help from AI. Right now, the United States Copyright Office and the jurisprudence that is out there on this issue is pretty clear that you cannot copyright AI-generated content or works, at least for now. Human-generated works are the only things that are protected by intellectual property law, and where the courts and the US Copyright Office have there's no clarity yet, is how much human intervention is necessary for something to be considered a human-generated work. The Copyright Office is requiring disclosures when you have hybrid content or hybrid works of what was human-generated and what was not. And at least for now, until it's litigated, the approach is that anything that was generated by machines cannot be protected by copyright. That's a good question. How can someone tell if it's human-generated versus AI? There are some pieces of software out there that allege to be able to do that, and I think those will also grow in sophistication. But at this point, it is probably whether you're going to, certify to a federal agency in good faith that it was not created by machines.
There are some, as you start to experience and play around with these tools, you'll start to really identify what are some of the tropes that come in the output that really identify it as, oh, that's obviously was written by GPT. They just use some of the same. If you use simple prompts, they come out with the similar outputs over and over and over again. So they use the same phrasing, same cadence, same styles, because they're trained to kind of fine tune to have those type of outcomes. And different models are fine tuned differently, so you can find different. Again, as you experience them, you'll start to see it more and more.
We've covered issue, some of the rules, and now we're getting to the fun part, which is application. I know that there's a lot of people, a lot of kind of compliance experts out there that the use of AI makes them very, very anxious. And sometimes it makes me anxious as well, but I think that healthy awareness of the rules should not minimize the incredible potential that generative AI offers to lawyers, to people who are managing law firms, to legal marketers, really any business. I know software engineers that are finding 30% increases in efficiency through the use of the appropriate and ethical and compliant use of AI right now. And this is going to be the new normal. Increasingly, if you're not using it, you're at a disadvantage because your competitors are probably going to be using AI more and more. And so let's dig into some use cases.
So this is an area where I've been regularly playing is how do we operationalize these tools? How do we begin to bring them into our businesses? And before we get into some concrete examples, I would encourage those of you who have not yet experienced or played with some of these tools to begin with something personal. A lot of the writers in this area talk about finding success and unlocking the aha moment behind where you can start to see benefit is when you really address it with something sort of personal to your life. Whether it's creating a recipe from what you have listing out what you have in your fridge, to having an interpersonal conversation about concerns of dating. I mean, it can be awfully personal, but what they have found is the experiences that create those aha moments that really unlock the benefits of use from a practical business perspective come from those personal experiments. Personally, I created a prompt script for a tool, and I allowed my kids to interact with it supervised to see how their imagination would play with it, and watching them interact and create worlds of sort of fantasy and then also worlds of fact, and getting information about, endangered animals in the Everglades and things like that. It was really, really brought me past, hey, can this thing just write me an email, or can it just do some market research for me? Something really tactical and practical. And you'll see where we try and push beyond that boundary in these next few examples. So a couple of areas where we think it can play. Operational efficiency, right? So as people incorporate this into their work streams, it can tackle bundles of tasks much faster than a human might. It's not necessarily going to replace a job, but rather think of it as replacing individual or bundles of tasks. So you really work with it iteratively, much more like an intern of some sort. Also, since it is trained on a wide body of knowledge, it can help you fill in gaps that you might have in your own thinking or own experience. And then again, there's this ability to have sort of personalization. And so improving your client messaging is a great opportunity as well. So our recommendations, we're assuming that you're using a closed, secure AI model for all of these. Again, be careful what you put in, try to anonymize what you can, and try to avoid the open LLMs and any personal information. The caveat there is grab anything you can and start experimenting today, because as Leigh said, your competitors will be out there learning how to build this stuff into their operations. So first example, strategic decision support, right? Many of you are business owners, and you are also practicing law. So you can't be an expert in all things at all times. So here is an area where you can actually lean to the model, not just to do necessarily a task for you, but offer you some strategic advice And when you're thinking about utilizing one of these LLMs in a more of an advisory capacity, really look to not engage it for question answer, but more dialogue. So don't be afraid to ask questions or pose theories and ask for criticisms, feedback. Where can it punch holes in your thinking? When you're trying to expand your business and you're trying to look at competitors and should you be offering another practice area? Is it a saturated market for that kind of practice area already? You can look and have it do a bit of a competitive analysis on what are the service offerings of every business in your area, and how do they stack up against yours, and then dialogue with it, and then find out if there's areas of opportunities. Ask, have it imagine new offerings for you and develop. We worked with one of our clients, and this is in another professional services space, but they had a number of service offerings, and they wanted to work in an industry. They wanted to package those for that industry vertical in particular. And so we worked to analyze the offerings, what was the sort of market persona from a jobs to be done standpoint. And we created this great analysis of which of those offerings are most resonant to these particular customers, and then how might we create some language around that package to help them sell it as sort of a first stage iteration on new product development. So you can use these things for much more than just simply banging out an email or asking it to draft some blog copy. Those you can work on that in that way as well, but your benefits become greater as you start to engage it greater. Leigh, do you have anything to add here?
Not at this point, but I do think that Ginger wants to introduce some of the sponsors.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. What we'll do is we'll just take kind of a quick break right now. And Will, is it okay if we close out of this just for a second?
Yep, sure.
And I am going to go ahead and bring in first our wonderful friend. His name is Patrick over at On Point Legal Nurse Consulting. You guys know we rave about this company. Sean Romano loves working with them, as well as he talks about how amazing your pain and suffering reports are. So anyway, Patrick, I know it is so good to have you with us. Thank you for being here. And please share with everybody all the things that you guys can help our attorneys out with.
Sure. Well, my name is Patrick, and thanks again. Nice to see you, Ginger. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm one of the nurses and one of the program directors over at On Point. I've been a nurse for going on 20 years. My background is in home health and hospice. So I'm in the crazy, wonderful world of post-acute care. So that includes home health, hospice, and any long-term care facilities like skilled nursing facilities, personal care homes, and assisted living facilities. So our firm, it consists of nurses. All the program directors are nurses. I'm I guess the junior nurse at 20 years. Ingrid has been a nurse for 40 years. She's master's prepared, as well as Dawn has been 38 years as a nurse. So we have my program is the long-term care. So anything involving senior care and in the outpatient setting is what my department does. Dawn is in charge of all of our medical experts. So for any medical expert needs that you have, Dawn is the expert on finding and placing those. We also have a life care planner on staff. Her name is Lisa, so she can develop all the life care plans. And then we have a team that does our medical chronologies, our merit screening process. So we like to get involved in the case as soon as possible so we can kind of help and follow you guys as the case progresses. We also have the pain and suffering reports, which is one of the big topics that I'm going to be speaking about in Nashville. And the pain and suffering report is a non-economic damage report. So it really focuses, since I'm a nurse, the nursing perspective of everything that is involved with a patient after an injury happens. So every single procedure, every test, anything that hurts the patient or causes some sort of suffering based off of the injury that occurred. They're very lengthy reports. They're very educational because we're explaining exactly, for instance, a Foley catheter is placed, how that hurts, changing him hurts, and what is involved having that done over and over and over again. So the nurses will interview the client and produce that report back. And it just gives a very different perspective. Nurses tend to get different information than some doctors will get because they like to tell us different things. Not that we always want to hear what they want to tell us, but and of course, for attorneys look at it in a different way. And we hope that our clients give us all of the information, but you'd be very surprised of what clients tell us, and then what I report back to the attorneys is a very different picture sometimes. So we're here to help. I'll put my information in the chat, and hopefully I'll get to see a bunch of you in Nashville, which is next Saturday. So
I'm so excited.
yeah,
Leigh, I
that'll
was
be
going
fun.
to tell you that you're going to meet Patrick because you guys will both be
Yeah,
there.
I'm excited to
Yeah,
meet you.
we'll be there. I have a whole crew coming down.
It's going to be fun. All right,
We
and then
will.
real quick, before we forget, Patrick, tell everybody about your special event in June.
Sure. So on point, we're doing our very first medical legal symposium in Philadelphia on June 19th. It's going to be a one-day event. It's going to be held at the Barnes Foundation Museum in Philadelphia. And it's going to be a combination of the medical side and the legal side. So we have a few attorneys that are going to be speaking. Jessica LaFleur from Romano Law Group is going to be talking about telemedicine and misdiagnoses with telemedicine. We have an attorney out of New Jersey that's going to be speaking about skilled nursing facility abuse and neglect. We have another group, the Senior Law Project in Philadelphia is going to talk about financial exploitation in the senior community. And then the nurses and doctors that we have will be there as well. So it'll be one day. We have 7 credits that are available for CLEs, and it should be a great day. It's a beautiful place. The museum is really awesome. So if you want a nice long day in Philadelphia, please come join us.
Oh, that is wonderful. And I'll make sure that I share a link so everyone can find out information about this after the webinar as well.
Awesome.
So
Thank you very much.
It's always great seeing you. And like I said, we'll see you next weekend.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'll see you on
Patrick.
Saturday.
All right. And then our wonderful friend Nathaniel is here to share with you guys all the great things that Foxae does. And if you've already seen me on these webinars, again, you've seen me talk about this company, and everything that they share, it just speaks volumes. So I'm just going to let Nathaniel go ahead and explain all the good things they do, because it amazes me every time.
Thanks, Ginger, for having me again. It's a pleasure, as always. So a quick introduction. My name is Nathaniel Murray. I actually graduated with a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Missouri-Columbia, and I am the VP of Operations here at Fox, and I work directly with Cody Roberts. I'm sure you all have seen Cody Roberts on here, probably a lot more than me. But let me show you an animation that we've recently finished. This is an auto collision that shows the mechanism of injury. And in this particular case, the police officer was driving on the opposite side of the road, going in the in pursuit. He had his lights on. He was going 80 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone. What happened was a car was turning left. And of course, you don't expect anyone to be traveling in the opposite direction of the travel, and caused the police officer to hit them, and then ended up going onto the sidewalk and hitting this poor girl here. And this in particular is just showing the mechanism of injury. And as you can see, somehow she survived, and she had multiple spinal fractures, multiple rib fractures, I think some hematomas as well, and of course some lung collapses right here as well. And we like to show how it happened first, and then we like to show what Cody likes to say, the wow factor in it. And this, we work directly with experts. So we worked with the biomechanical expert to make sure that these happened in the correct timing, or as close as possible, to have those injuries in live time, basically. And we don't just do auto collisions. We do some surgeries. We do just injury still shots. We show a lot of animations, but we do still shots as well for a more affordable price. So yeah, if you have anything, any illustrations you need, you can just let me know and I'll put my information in the chat.
All I know is it's incredibly realistic. And I tell you what you guys are doing is amazing. And I know that Cody will be with us in Nashville as well. This is gonna be like one great get together. Like I'm so excited to see everybody. But what you're doing is just phenomenal work. And don't forget to put your information in the chat box because I'm hoping if everyone doesn't already have you guys saved in their phone, I hope they will do that now because I'm convinced there's nothing that you guys can't do. It's pretty amazing. So thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I'm going to bring in Charles with Emotion Track. This is a very cool company as well. And Charles, are you there with us?
I am. I'm still here.
I'm so happy. Thank you for being with us today. You're the best person to kind of explain all the things that you guys do over there at Motion Track, but I know John Romano started working on some cases with you guys as well. You work with some of my other wonderful attorneys like Keith Mitnick, Ilya Lerma, many others. So please share with everybody the innovative things that you guys are doing at Emotion Track.
Yeah, no, it's nice to be on here with LaFleur. So this AI thing is just you can't. We're never going to put the genie back in the bottle. So I'll share my screen. So what we do is we record people's faces as they watch video. And the reason why we do that is we can show the maker of the video what people are feeling while they're watching the video. So it answers the question, what do people think about, not what do people think about my commercial, how do they feel about my commercial? Not what do people think about my case, what do they feel about the case, moment by moment by moment. So that's really it. And the reason why we do this is because people make their decisions based on emotions. And here's the Jerry Spence quote for the day. We make our decisions on an emotional basis of one kind or another, and we end up supporting the decisions with reason. So that's the whole thing. And we are diagnosing those emotions before you can think of them in 1/35 of a second. So I'm going to show, if I share my screen effectively, I want to show you a couple of meaningful things here. So the question is, and I guess you got to hide this guy, right? Okay. So the question is, for an attorney, are you maximizing case outcomes or are you settling for what you get? And that goes for someone who's spending $3 million on a Super Bowl commercial. And the question there would be, do you know what you're getting as you prepare that commercial? So we're using data and we're using science to give you insights that you're not otherwise going to have. So you can maximize the value of your case, that's the dollars and cents, but also maximize the results from a decision-making sense. Decisions are based on emotions and feelings, as the Spence quote goes. So it is data-driven. We use mobile phones. We have 100 people watch. And while they are watching, we are just rendering the expressions on their face into emotional feedback. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. All of what we're doing is based on the science developed by this guy, Paul Ekman. He got his PhD in 1955 or 1964, one of those two dates. Don't hold me to it. But he is still alive. He has a company that is teaching people how to read expressions. And the difference between us and a focus group is we give you data from 100 people, not 6, 8, 10, 12. And the difference is that I've talked to attorneys that have focus group one case 12 times, 10 times, 6 times. And, we can get rid of all of that. You can still focus group your case, but if you do it with us and a live focus group, you're only going to have to do it once. So you're not going to have to spend 6, 8, 10, 12 weekends in a hotel. Fully digital, fully SaaS, fully remote, fully easy to use. And here's an emotion track testimonial from a guy on the West Coast, Muhammad Ahmed. That case we worked on is a $51.3 million settlement. Here's a guy in the center of the country. His name's Hathan Faraj. He works with Nick Crowley, Trial Lawyers for Justice. And then here's Dino Colombo, very much involved in the community here at Connectionology. I'm not going to play those testimonials, but I just want you to know they exist. When you go into our dashboard, this is what you get. This is for free. Well, actually, you have to pay for it. So here's an attorney that has made a 12-minute video about a very complex case with lots of bad facts. And you're going to get to survey the panelists after the fact and say, hey, what'd you think about this? What'd you think about that? But here's the gold, is here's one of our emotional maps. And this is second by second. And what you will see here is you see 100 people responding emotionally to the content they are viewing, right? So you can see that we've got female in pink and male in blue. So look at the first 1 minute and 31 seconds, if you can see this. In the first 1 minute and 30 seconds, you have got the women engaged in the story. They are with you. They're agitated. The men, they're asleep at the wheel. So what is it about your opening statement that you just lost half your audience? And then you get here and you see this huge peak here, right? So you're going to watch this back and you're going to say, what did I say here? What did I say here? And those are going to become the emotional triggers of your case presentation. You're going to use them in opening, you're going to use them in closing. And you're going to know that maybe the 12 people in the box resemble the 100 people in the test. And then look what happens at the end of this. At the end of this, where the attorney is making the ask, well, who's on board with the ask? The women are on board with the ask. The men, you lost them. So that's what I wanted to show you about that. And then how do you turn this into a practicality? Let me see if I can show you this, and then I'll be done. So here's a survey question in black. This is an email I'm about to send out to an attorney. This is an email question in black. Here's an observation in blue from our social scientist. And then here is how you operationalize it as an attorney. To gain more support for Adon, especially from men, it's important to emphasize his deep emotional reliance on his wife's support, showcasing his vulnerability to argue for compensation.
That is crazy interesting.
So,
Oh
you know,
my gosh.
most of the time we just talk about the face and whatnot, but that's how you operationalize it, which is I'm going to watch the playback and I'm going to see where I've got the women, where I've got the men, where, you know, we have one good case with, talk about animation, where you can take an animation, you can put part of the animation in the beginning and part of the animation in the end, and you can find out which piece of the animation resonates emotionally, not intellectually. The expert witness is going to cover that, but you want to know which part of your animation is going to trigger the reaction that you're looking for. So that's the long and the short of that, and that's what we're doing over here at Emotion Track.
Well, you're doing great things, Charles. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing all this. Please tell Jonathan and Aaron that we would love to have you back, and keep up the great work over there. If you have access to the chat, please put your information in there as well, so that way everybody can stay in touch with you. But
Will do.
awesome work.
Look forward to seeing you in Nashville. Thank you so much, Ginger.
Yes, sir. All right. Thanks again. We'll see you soon. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Leigh and Will, back to you guys.
All right.
Yeah.
So a second example that we have to share with you today is around audience and jury research. One of the things that is getting a lot of really great play right now in a number of different areas is utilizing these large language models for role playing. So in this scenario, we're imagining that you could build profiles of potential jurists in a very, very simple, broad example listed here. The more detail you give, the better the results will get. I just sort of asked for generally 12 personas of jurists, and it wound up giving me sort of breakdowns of 12. You can use that and say, okay, based on these personas, let's interact. Here's my argument. What are these jurists thinking? This idea of role-playing interaction not only helps you in perfecting your argument, but also allows you to test for virtually nothing and at a very quick speed any number of arguments that you might have. And one of the things that there's been a lot of research around role play and synthetic data. One of the things I found most interesting in one of the research reports was when they analyzed a survey, a national survey. I believe it was 1,000 respondents, and they took that actual survey. They tried to recreate that survey as best they could within the confines of an LLM and sort of process the data. What they found was that the distribution of responses mimicked the real human responses. And it makes a little sense, little common sense from the perspective of if it's trained on sort of the general corpus of the internet, then it has a pretty wide distribution of responses from a human perspective, and so it will distribute its responses accordingly. There was also an interesting finding in there in terms of positivity factor. LLMs tend to be a little bit more positive response-wise than humans. There's lots of reasons. I think we could go into that, but I won't bore you. That said, there's a lot of really interesting use cases for whether it's jury panels or in our marketing experience, we have created panels of customer targets for both our clients and for ourselves. And so we'll take some of our work, our messages, or email campaigns, blog copy, digital ads, and we'll run them past these panel groups to get customer level insight while we're in the creation mode of these things. And it is a really quick way to test some of their things, get feedback and insight, and get you out of your own lens to better perfect whatever it is you're trying to create.
And on top of that, in the deck, we also mention expert witnesses. There's any time that you might think about role playing or using a mock jury or walking a client through potential cross-examination questions. There's some interesting places to play around with AI to think of potentially questions and queries that you would not have on your own. And I would imagine that the really creative attorneys that are here with us today can suggest some use cases for role play using AI that we haven't even thought about. All right. Charles talked a little bit about storytelling, but I think that I have an increasing, I've always loved storytelling. And I think that there's a reason that stories resonate so deeply amongst people. And there's studies out there that show that if you tell something in a story versus just kind of objective facts and bullet points, individuals are more likely to hold on to that and remember it and process it than the dry kind of esoteric stuff. In our information-laden world, storytelling is more and more important. But not all lawyers, not all people are natural storytellers. And there are some opportunities to use AI to flex your creativity in ways that maybe you haven't thought about before. And one of those examples I have here is, I'm a talker. I know a lot of people who've practiced law love to kind of talk. Will can tell you painful stories about me talking too much. But asking your generative AI model to, channel its inner Ernest Hemingway or another writer that you find writes powerful, emotive, but concise information, and providing either an anonymized model of giving an anonymized rundown of your facts of your case, or in a closed model, some more specific information, and having your version of Ernest weave through and highlight some of the issues and pain points in a way that is really evocative that you might not. I've done this a couple of times, playing around with, channeling emotion through storytelling in ways that I wouldn't necessarily think about. Sometimes you get some really hokey stuff, but every once in a while you get a vignette or a moment that you would not have thought about, focusing the lens in on. And it's really interesting and could be really powerful. And so I think it's an interesting and exciting place to bring some creativity back into the practice.
One thing to keep in mind, I think, in all of our examples is a way to think about this, as opposed to maybe more traditional software, is the iterative nature of it. And so what you're aiming for is to test at huge scale any number of ideas very, very quickly to get to one that's most satisfying. If you were to sit down and draft something, that would take you, 10, 100, 1,000 times longer, and you'd get through a couple of different versions and then you'd choose from there. As opposed to looking at 3 versions of story or of sort of a jury panel, you can look at hundreds in the same amount of time as you would traditionally. And keeping that idea of hypothesis and experimentation, or the flip side of that, creativity and inspiration, are great ways to interact with these tools.
All right, the less creative, warm and fuzzy part. If you are engaging in any type of large budget marketing for your law firm, and the kind that you would likely send samples of it and storyboards and other assets to the state bar for an advertising review, if you've done that before, you know how frustrating that can be, where they micromanage and send things back, and you're doing what seems like 97 iterations of the same ad over and over and over again. One thing we have done with some pretty significant success is building a custom GPT, which is trained on a state's rules of professional conduct and advisory opinions. Those are pieces of information that are readily available on the internet that you can also provide to the GPT, train it on that information, and then have it review a piece of creative and identify potential issues with that creative and fix them prior to going and sending it to the bar. We've had really good success with having generative AI kind of scan and identify potential compliance pitfalls. Maybe not the most nuanced ones, but a lot of even subtle ones that they've identified in the past.
So another thing to look at when you're running your business is you want to have a feedback loop, right? So what are clients saying publicly about your firm? You can go to any number of review sites, sort of scrape that data. There are certain tools that have internet access built into them, so you could give it a URL and have it scrape its own data. But it can read hundreds, thousands of reviews and then come back and give you a sentiment analysis. It can help you identify what do past clients feel are positives or negatives, where are their gaps, where can you improve, any number of questions you can ask from essentially taking all these public reviews and turning it into an instant survey, and give feedback and help you in the direction that you might want to go to improve your firm's reputation.
If you're also doing internal surveys with your clients, you can upload that information to a closed GPT model and have it, I mean, because a lot of times reviews are, you're not gonna, you might have a lot of 5-star reviews and you might have, hopefully very few, but a few lower 1 or 2-star reviews. But if your clients are giving you candid feedback throughout their journey as a client, and you can have a GPT or an OpenAI model kind of assess that and identify trends and potential gaps in your client services.
All right. Question and answer time. I cannot see the questions because I'm presenting. So if Leigh, Ginger, you can help out. I'm going to leave this up for just a minute so people can take.
Absolutely. And if it's okay, while everybody is thinking about which questions they like to ask, I'm going to bring in our last partner for today. His name is Blue, and he's with HMR. And he's going to come in and share some of the great things that they do over there as well. So if anybody watching has some last minute questions that they like to ask Leigh and Will, now's the time to start getting those into the chat box or the Q&A box. And Blue will be coming in just a moment. And then he will also be announcing the winner of the coffee giveaway for today too. So he will be joining us. And he's also coming from Scottsdale, Arizona, for anybody asking. HMR works in all 50 states. All right, Blue, I'm going to go with it. I'm just kidding. We are so
All right,
excited to
cool.
have you
Yeah.
with us. I'm taking over.
Sorry, Ginger. I was having a little bit of camera trouble there. Anyways, wonderful to join you today as usual, everyone. Will, Leah, great talk today. Really enjoying these key points. Just briefly, I'm going to go through who is HMR. So HMR Servicing, we are the premier funding source for personal injury and plaintiff law firms nationwide. We specialize in catastrophic injury cases, for the most part, traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord damage, amputees, the full gamut, right? There's 3 different, and I like to call them funding buckets that we offer for attorneys. And I'm just going to go through those with you guys briefly. Obviously, I will put my information in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out at any time. So here we go. The first is going to be case cost. This is something that I've been getting a lot of phone calls about as of late, and that's for experts, life care planners, anything needed to shore up your case. Fox AE, if you guys, if you need those wonderful videos that Cody and them do, those can get expensive. So, if that becomes a heavy lift, give us a call. Let me know. We'd be willing to step in and help out with those costs on the case. Second is going to be medical funding. So we currently function for medical funding in 39 states. I always like to bring that up to let everyone know that we work with providers nationwide. Also, if you have your stable of providers that you really enjoy working with and like to work with, well, we would like to work with them as well. So don't let that stop you from, giving us a call on that piece. Last but not least is going to be pre-settlement funding. So this is for your clients directly. This is probably the hardest time that they're going to go through in their life, or that they're going through so far. They can't pay their mortgage. They have personal items that they need to take care of in their life. Completely understandable. And we do offer that as well. And like I said, if you have any questions about any of that, please feel free to reach out at any time. Ginger, it's always wonderful to join you. We love being in partnership with Connectionology. And did you want to do the coffee, the giveaway right now?
Yes, sir. Let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
While we get
Okay,
everybody
cool.
here. And
Let me
don't forget,
see.
guys, again, if you don't win, there's going to be many more chances. We'll do some more webinars later in May. But I think it's going to be very cool. I'm excited to see who the winner is.
All right, cool. So let me see here. All right, so the winner is Stephen Tony from, let's see, Tony Law Offices in New London. So
Yay. All right,
Stephen, enjoy that
congratulations.
coffee. It is extremely potent, I will say. So just be prepared for that. You're gonna get going. So enjoy that.
Well, I tell you what, thank you so much for announcing the winner today. I know usually Ted is here, but that's okay because we've got the next best thing. So thank you, Blue, for coming in to share this. And congratulations, Stephen. Both myself and Blue, we'll reach out to you after the webinar to make sure that you get this wonderful coffee. And thank you guys so much for just being so generous, Blue, and doing these coffee giveaways. I think we are surpassed thousands of coffee giveaways so far. We've done hundreds of webinars. So thank you for that. And looking forward to seeing all of you guys in Nashville next weekend. But it's going to be a good time.
Absolutely, Ginger. Thanks again for having us. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Blue. And be sure to put your information in the chat box for everybody. Okay. All right. See you soon. And then also, Leigh and Will, while I have you guys here, before we get to a couple of these questions, is there anything about LaFleur Marketing that you could tell everybody watching? Maybe there's something they don't know that you guys do yet, or what do you specialize in? So that way everybody watching will have a chance to do some work with you guys too.
Sure. So LaFleur is a data-driven data-driven marketing agency. Historically, our focus has been digital, but we've gone far beyond that. We don't come in with just, we're going to do SEO for you. We look at your goals, your brand, and dig into your data, what's performing, what's not performing terribly well, and build really fact-based, thoughtful strategies that reflect your goals and not just what a blog or something has told you need to do. Digging into the numbers that really matter and into the metrics that really matter for individual agencies. Will, anything you want to add to that?
Sure. Along with that, our focus on data and being the grounding agent behind effective marketing is we also have a sister company in the market research realm. It's called Orchard Insights, and they do behavioral insights testing. So whereas Emotion Track is looking for your emotions behind the why, we're at Orchard Insights are looking at the behaviors. So what are people going to do versus what are they going to say? And I think Emotion Track and Orchard come at it from the same question from different angles, right? People say one thing, they feel one thing, they do another, and it's all part of that spectrum of understanding that you want to get when you're dealing with reaching people. And so that's something that we build into our process, and that's something that we can also do any number of tests for marketing campaigns and performance-driven campaigns. In addition to the SEO, which we've been known for years, we also do a lot of really great work in the performance marketing space, and are really driving great value and quality there. So another thing we can help out with.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys complement each other very well. So you'll have to send me some information that I can share with everybody on that company too.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you guys are doing amazing stuff. So I can't wait for everyone to talk to you about it in Nashville next weekend as well. So I see a couple questions that have come in real quick. One of them is, can everybody get a copy of the otter.ai transcript? Is that possible?
I don't have actively Otter AI running transcribing on this. I'm not sure if somebody else did. It looked like a few people might have.
I've seen a couple. In
Yeah.
fact, I think some people are using some AI in the chat box.
I was
You guys are
noticing that.
smart. I'm very proud of you for doing this.
Yeah, I don't have my a transcription on right now, but it looks like somebody else does, and that is a great kind of, we delved into some more creative uses for AI, but transcription, and drafting emails, social media posts, digging through, large volumes of records. Those are other things, obviously, that I think a lot of people are already thinking about. Our idea today was to explore some things that were a little bit more creative. But yeah, if y'all can share your transcriptions with each other, that'd be amazing.
Okay, perfect. And then this question also came up. So many wonderful ideas from Will and Leigh. And how would any attorney take their existing website and use generative AI to turn what they have into a really good back presentation for new clients?
Ooh.
Good question.
Yeah, one of the things that I kind of regularly do when I'm starting to do a competitive analysis, or even turning the lens inward toward ourselves, is I will use our URL and put that into Gemini's model or even OpenAI's model, and have it give me a breakdown on what is our value propositions, what do we do well, what might be resonant, and I might look at where other people who I see as competitors do the same thing on them, and then use those three responses and then compare them and say, okay, imagine that you're a customer and you're looking at these three opportunities to work with somebody. How do you want to stand out, right? So what do you need to do to stand out to that customer? And so using that analysis to sort of see where do you fit a little bit of blue ocean and go over and lean to that. So it can break down your finer points of what kind of value do you contribute, and it also gives you a differentiation space that you can play into.
Okay, fantastic, you guys. Thank you. All right, and then I think there was another comment that just came in. Is Will saying he needs to just put down or put his URL in the chat? I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a great way to do competitive analysis to, even if you have a very strong brand identity and of who your firm is, to see if, you throw your URL in and ask your generative AI model to summarize your value proposition back to you and see if it's saying the same thing that you hope it does. There's some really interesting things you can do to kind of pressure test your messaging and to identify gaps in your content, in your services, all sorts of things on a website.
One of the things that we all do instinctively as humans is, we see things from our own perspective. And so one of the greatest values of the tool is to be able to see beyond our own limitations and get somebody else's point of view without having to face any sort of, criticism or self-doubt. You can just throw it in there, see what it has to say. It gives you a pretty good analysis of what you are. It's not varnished by anything. It's not trying to flatter you or tell you what you want to hear. And then you can really build upon that and really push yourself and your business into a territory that creates true value for customers.
Okay, perfect. So same time next month, right? We're going to see you
That's
guys
right.
back here, and we got a lot more we need to cover because there's so much coming out there. I just want to say thank you both so much for being here and taking the time to help educate everybody today. Again, we're going to post this on our YouTube channel so everybody can refer back to it. But is there anything else that you guys would like to mention before we hop off?
Make sure you see Leigh next weekend. Come say hi.
I'll be in Nashville. We can nerd out about AI or talk about storytelling. I love both topics. And this is an area that is advancing and evolving so rapidly. Explore, be mindful of the rules, track the rules, but don't let the rules keep you away from trying things, because I'd be fascinated to hear next time around what use cases you all have identified that we haven't even uncovered yet.
Perfect. And by the way, I do notice some of our attendees are watching, so I'm counting on you guys to go talk to Leigh in Nashville next week and tell her what you learned and discuss some more of this. It's fascinating.
I look forward to it.
All right, guys. If you give me a minute, I will email you the contact information for Leigh and for Will so you can stay in touch with them. And then also just a reminder, you'll be able to reach out to Leigh to get a copy of today's slides. Thank you again to all of our amazing partners at HMR, OnPoint, Fox AE, and Emotion Track. And again, huge thanks to all of you guys at LaFleur Marketing. Love working with you guys. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, we will see you later. Take care, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and thanks for watching today.